Hello, and welcome to episode 38 of the Luckycast. I'm your host, DeoxysPrime, and joining me on this edition of the anime podcast, we got Frank.
Yo!
We got Kenny.
What's up?
We got Matt.
Hello.
And we got Colin.
Hi.
So, this is our season wrap-up podcast for the summer 2019 anime season. We're going to go through every show as we usually do from the season, at least the ones that we watched. And as always, warning, there are going to be spoilers for the shit we talk about, so.
And Kenny watched everything.
You did not watch everything.
I know I didn't.
Because for the first show, you absolutely did not watch. for reasons that will always be beyond any of us. You just hate good anime, I guess, but.
Because you fucking, you're just like, gotta watch it. You're talking about Yaiba, right?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the second core.
Kimetsu no Yaiba
of
Yaiba.
yes.
Ninja's favorite anime.
Just fucking say that.
I mean, Colin has to take responsibility for that one because he made it, so.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, I worked very hard on Yaiba, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
And yet,
nice show.
And yet, Matt and I gave it a higher score than you did, if you ended up scoring it.
That is true.
So, I mean, we talked about this a lot on the previous podcast, but we don't necessarily have to go back into that unless it's relevant, but I do want to know how you felt about the second core, Colin, and how the show inevitably wrapped up.
Well, I've read the manga, so knowing where this was going, I was kind of worried that you guys would actually drop off in terms of your enjoyment at a certain point, because I believe that the weakest part of the manga takes place around this second half. So I'm actually rather happy to say that the worst is behind us. I don't think the manga ever dips below this point.
That's saying something.
Yeah. I've always felt that the pillar meeting is the absolute worst part of the entire manga.
I mean, I can agree with that with the show.
Was that after? Yeah. Was that immediately after like the Spider Forest?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. I've always felt like that was kind of a weak introduction for those characters who end up being really, really strong later on. That
was the part of the show that really worried me for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of throw a lot at you.
And it actually is something that I'll kind of go into when we get into Kanata no Astra later. But the way they introduced those characters, it was they did the shonen thing of here's these new characters and here's their quirk.
They're very very eccentric.
Yeah, thankfully they tone it down once you get to see them individually. Just nice.
I'm happy that none of them really appeared again. At least except for what's her face?
Shinobu.
Yeah, her.
Yeah. So in this second half, we got to get into the spider arc, which is sort of the first time you get to see Tanjiro kind of working alongside others, not so closely as he will be later, but you get to see other characters get a little bit more attention. And another character I was kind of worried about was Zenitsu. And I know you guys, I know you guys did not click with that character initially, and he's very easy to find annoying.
I mean, that's the point.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and I think that, and maybe I'm giving the show too much credit here, but he's actually a character, the writing behind him I almost kind of admire, because when Zenitsu gets his own very special episode, there is this one particular line where he says something akin to, "People want to see me fail." And that kind of resonated with me.
That speaks a lot about our current society, doesn't it?
No, I mean that in a way that I don't think you write a character like that and then drop a line like that with the expectation that the character has been a likable oaf up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think the author really committed to giving Zenitsu those just horrible personality traits. And he sort of slowly begins to redeem himself just by proving that he is dependable.
Mm-hmm. Kind of inadvertently, but
I just feel my biggest problem is they start him so fucking low of just being the absolute most scaredy cat. I don't want to be in this anime, but we're gonna spend some time focusing on me because I'm in the anime.
It was fun. It was fun. Like I think this was the first core, but where they're going through the crazy house.
Yeah.
Just those reactions of Tanjiro, and then even the kid he's supposed to be protecting. Mm-hmm. And later on, I did like. This is kind of a silly moment. I did like the episode where he fights like the spider guy with the human head.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Like everything involving his background in that episode was just extremely well done, and just made him all the more like all the build up to that point. Like he's such just annoying character, and you're just kind of waiting for the point where it's like, okay, how are we gonna redeem this guy? And they do kind of. Yeah. And even in the end, at the very end, he kind of becomes more of a straight man to an extent. Yeah, which kind of helps him out a bit too.
He's much more entertaining as a pissed off straight man than he is as a coward. Mm-hmm. And obviously, none of them are really a straight man, which kind of makes them really entertaining later when you see them play off each other more.
Yeah,
because each one of them is just completely fucking crazy in their own way.
I mean, I think you said it at one point. They're anime Three Stooges, and it
yeah, like that's definitely true.
I think the group of them together are much more endearing than each of them are individually, and that dynamic is what made the second half of the show work so well for me.
Yeah. Also, just that last episode where they're just trying to get on the train.
Oh yeah, that was a great change that they made to the manga, by the way, because in the manga they just kind of happen upon the train, whereas in the anime they actually get called to a job with Rengoku. Mm-hmm. Which I thought worked better.
Yeah.
Also,
that was just great.
Yeah, can I talk about this? They made a great adjustment with Kanata, where they actually placed her backstory before the whole like Tanjiro coin flipping scene. Mm-hmm. Whereas that was a little bit more awkwardly implemented in the manga. The thing about Yaiba is that I enjoyed my read through of it all the way through. But the author has a tendency to introduce things once and then not really build it up as much after that. But that's how she has set up and payoff. Is that there's always something before. So nothing is ever completely out of nowhere. But you always wish there was more build up.
Right.
Like for instance, you have the Dance of the Fire God, which is a phenomenal moment. And people, I saw people online calling it an ass pull, and I'm like, well, hold on a second, rewind. Rewind. We do know that Tanjiro's lineage carries some significance already.
It doesn't even count as ass pull because he didn't win.
Yeah, he didn't even fucking win.
How is it an ass pull if he didn't win? Yeah.
Every time he powers up, he gets his ass kicked.
You can't call it a plot hole if he fucking tripped in it.
Yeah. So we already know that Muzan shits his pants at the sight of Hanafuda earrings. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, and because of that, it makes sense. Like he could not assess like Tanjiro's abilities in the moment. It's like, okay, Muzan's a huge pussy, and that's kind of what I like about him as a main villain. Is that the reason why he's not hands-on is because he's just a huge coward.
I mean, he literally has to control people by he has to make people cower to him. Yeah, he has to treat him like shit in order for him to do anything for him.
Well, he has dominion over demons, right?
Right.
So they'll do whatever he wants. But if he cannot assess a situation like someone's abilities properly, he's not going to do shit.
Right.
He's going to lay back. he
Uh-huh.
will Shimona all out of there.
Yeah.
Right. He ain't having none of this. By the way, great final scene where you think you're gonna be like climbing up the ladder of 12 bosses, right?
And he's just like, nah, you're
It's like
fuck you.
no more because the lower moons are ostensibly just Jannies.
Uh-huh.
They do it for free. They just clean up the refuse of the demon slaying core. Where really the upper moons are the only ones who really fucking matter.
Right.
And they even note this in the show. Ubuyashiki is like who's the leader of the demon slaying corps. Is like, hey, we suck right now. We suck. We're getting dunked on by lower moons.
Yeah. That was something I did appreciate because when I was watching the whole Spider family arc, I was like thinking, this Demon Slayer corp seems pretty shitty if they're just like sending hundreds of people at this one group of demons and they're all just getting massacred. Like this seems like a kind of disorganized thing if they could have just sent one guy, like one of the big Hashiras to do the job.
They say Hashira for whatever reason. I guess
Yeah,
in
pillars.
this translation they choose not to translate the word to pillar.
Yeah,
because it sounds
pillars.
cooler.
It sounds cooler. Like they send one of the pillars later, and he just wipes the floor with them, and it's like, why didn't they just do that to begin with? But then they're like, our Demon Slayers kind of suck ass, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess they didn't realize how bad they really were. Like maybe that's why they sent so many.
Because I also presume they need them to level up, so you can't just level up fighting shitty demons all the time.
Right. I guess that's true.
I did appreciate in that moment, like, I mean, obviously everyone kind of freaked out online when episode 19 aired, and it was just like one of the most beautiful individual episodes of anime you'll ever watch. But it's like just to give Tanjiro that moment, but also like just frame it in the larger context of like how strong he is versus what he's up against. Like to be able to do that. And, like, you didn't feel cheated when it was revealed that he actually lost that fight.
Yeah, because he's still got a ways to go.
I mean, all of them...
Because doing that still helped him live. Right. It did something. It wasn't for nothing.
And also, like, the show is just really good at showing the consequences of all these fucking battles. Like,
oh, yeah.
I like, if you had told me, like, the last 3 episodes were just, like, a training arc... and it didn't have like a big epic finale, I would going into it, I probably wouldn't be disappointed. But I really enjoyed those last few episodes because most shows don't take the time to show that stuff.
Yeah, it's like they literally have to spend like several months just recovering from all the shit that they went through.
Yeah,
and that was just one just one lower 12.
Yeah,
that they had to deal with that did that, and it just shows how far they really have to go. And they all got their ass whooped. All 3 of our heroes, even Nezuko.
Oh yeah. By the way, I just love during that moment in episode 19 that this is the first time since episode 1 where you hear Nezuko's voice.
Oh yeah,
and you're hearing all throughout the series, hey, Nezuko's still in there. She's still a person. You finally get to hear her voice again. I think that was probably my favorite part of the entire episode. Was hearing her.
I mean, you have the whole scene with Tanjiro going, and then just her adding into it just takes it to a whole nother level. Just going along with the whole theme of family and Tanjiro's family versus the demon spider family and all that. The show does a really fantastic job of like juxtapositioning Tanjiro's position with other characters' positions, or like I guess like just where they stand. I guess like it does this also earlier on with the guy whose girlfriend gets kidnapped and murdered, eaten by a demon. There's that one part where Tanjiro beats the demon and then he's walking away and the guy's like, how am I supposed to live on, blah blah blah, and Tanjiro just gives him this very somber look and just walks off. I think I mentioned this before.
Yeah. It was a very
we've talked about how the character is simple without being shallow.
Yeah, it's not like I think I've said this before. I feel like if this was any other shonen, he would have started shouting at him about how he lost his family too. If this was something like, what's it called? What's that shitty shonen that's airing right now that for some reason got popular? That everybody says is the Chad shonen.
Black Clover.
Yes, Black Clover. If this Black Clover would do that.
Yeah, well, Black Clover's lead is actually, you know what, that might be an interesting point of comparison. Black Clover's lead is a similarly extremely nice character with a not necessarily tragic, but a sort of a downtrodden background. Who is overwhelmingly optimistic. He is comparatively so much more boring to watch. And that's an interesting way to compare fairly similar static characters on the surface. I just feel like with Tanjiro, what you know of the character's history as the eldest brother, as the primary provider for his family at some point, that informs on basically his attitude and all his actions throughout the show. So I've seen some people call the character a Gary Stu, and I've never really felt that, because with a Gary Stu, it's usually at that point where a character is not believable, and there's never a point where in the context of the show Tanjiro feels unbelievable.
I mean, he can't really be a Gary Stu, because I mean that's complete. That whole argument is completely obliterated by the fact that the first couple episodes of the show take place over the course of 2 fucking years. He's training for 2 fucking years
just
to get the chance to be a demon slayer.
He's definitely not on the fast track. He's talented, but he's not on the fast track.
Yeah, he's not. This is not.
Plus,
sure. He's really nice. Sure, everybody he kind of comes in contact him everybody who comes in contact with him seems to fall in love with him to a certain extent.
Sort of. I think what I like is that
it's because he's just a likable guy.
Yeah.
That's why people do like him, because he's just a likable guy.
He's less of a Gary Stu sort of wish fulfillment character and more of just a role model character. Yeah. I think that's how he's primarily written.
Right.
Plus, with Gary Stu's and Mary Sue's, is that with that whole characters instantly like them, his dynamic with Zenitsu and Inosuke isn't like that. Yeah, they all like each other, but they also all piss each other off.
Oh yeah,
which is part of what makes them entertaining. And if it was just a Gary Stu, it'd be much flatter than that.
Yeah. I mean, also sometimes his niceness can even get in the way of doing what has to be done too.
I'm not sure about that. What do you mean by that?
Well,
you mean he needs to slap Zenitsu?
Kind of, I guess. Also, I don't know. I feel like there was something that happened, but now for some reason I can't think of one. He does. I mean, he gets what needs. He gets done what needs to be done. I don't know. I don't know what I was trying to go with that. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Look,
I know. What was it? I was just thinking of something. I think. And now I'm not sure.
That's okay.
There was something I was thinking of, and now I just can't remember.
I do wanna finally get Frank in on this, because we've all been waiting.
It's not a big deal.
To find out what his deal is with this show.
So I don't necessarily. I don't know if you can hear me right now.
Oh yeah, we
because,
can.
yeah,
Yeah,
we can.
here.
Okay, so I think that the show is ultimately like a visual and atmospheric tour de force. Like, there's no question about that. The fight scenes are absolutely gorgeous. The implementation of the character's special moves is like always stunning. Kajiura really knows how to compose, and she's in like, you know, peak form here. And like ultimately, like when you're watching it, it's, you know, a real marvel to behold, especially in episode 19. Because like it's that's movie quality stuff. And you know, there are other scenes too, like, you know, the one in like the tilting room in the first core that have like some marvelous visuals. Unfortunately, where I feel like the show doesn't really hold up to like that crazy good spectacle would be the fact that I don't think the character designs for the show work in a lot of cases. I think that a lot of the characters, especially some of the Hashira, have and the lower 12 in particular as well, have really egregious designs that are just super busy and don't translate particularly well from the manga into the anime, especially when they're colored. Like they just implement all manner of, you know, what is the name of that Hashira? Samantha is wildly pointing. The one with the pink hair. Her hair is pink, and then she has like neon green, and you know, a booby window, and yeah, and you know,
little
odd pupils, like.
And the thigh highs that are 3 different colors.
Yeah, and a lot of the characters, like the Gyu as well, like, you know, the second he's introduced, it's like, all right, so he's wearing like his gakuran, and then he has like his checkerboard pattern that's like yellow and black, and like they feel like all of these characters, except for the most part Shinobu, and the characters that are associated with her, they feel like they just have a mishmash of designs. They just feel like they don't come together in a way that works towards their character. The exception being, I think like you know, all the characters that are like part of the insect Hashira, you know, Kano and Aoi, and the characters that are associated with her, and Nezuko to a degree. I also have some real serious issues with Nezuko's portrayal as a character, because Nezuko kind of just does whatever the narrative needs her to do in that specific purpose. It's like, if the narrative needs Nezuko to just do nothing and be cute, then she's going to be, you know, just sitting there and being cute. If it needs her to kick ass, then she's gonna kick ass. But the fact that she's gagged doesn't really do her any favors. And, you know, she is like the prominent lead female character, and like that in particular to me is frustrating, especially like, you know, I don't really feel much for Zenitsu. I would kind of much rather the gag be placed on him instead, though he does have some interesting bits. I did find it funny in the little training camp arc at the end when he realizes that you know, they're all being trained by girls, and he just kind of like, you know, drags them outside to, you know, rip them a new one for a little bit. Like, bits like that can be funny. But for the most part, I think the gag wears thin. You see so many characters like that in shonen these days, and Zenitsu doesn't really do enough for me to distinguish himself from other characters like that. I find Inosuke to be a much more hilarious character. I think that his antics are fucking great. I think watching him fight is really entertaining because his win condition is just so different from Tanjiro's. Because Tanjiro has to, you know, focus on his threads and, you know, like really focus himself. And then Inosuke's win condition is like correctly remembering the amount of swords that he's holding in his hands. Like,
I did like the one part in the one episode where he's just like like he's fighting like the giant spider dad,
Right.
and he's just looking at his swords, and he's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
"Wait a minute, I have 2 swords," and
Yeah.
he just starts hammering one sword into his arm.
It's really entertaining
It's like-
because it's I get that the vibe with him, Tanjiro, and Zenitsu is that like these are 3 characters that have a very, very different approach to fighting, and when it all comes together, they make for a varied cast to make the fight scenes like that much more interesting. And not only that, their character interactions are good too. I did think it was cute at the train scene at the end where Tanjiro Inosuke is going nuts trying to fight it, and Tanjiro is like, oh, maybe it's like the guardian deity of the land or whatever, and Zenitsu has to just sort of he's the only one that like really has any sort of awareness there. So I do think that the character works when he's just like this sort of like bitter, disgruntled sort of straight man character, as Colin was saying earlier. But ultimately, I think the gag just doesn't, it doesn't land for me anyway. But I'm hoping that they end up doing something better with Nezuko. I think that they really need to, make her into more of a character, because it was very satisfying in episode 19 when you heard her talk for the first time. It is great to see that crazy good blast at the end of the episode come from the bits of her blood that are on Tanjiro's blade coming together, as he says, like, this is the bond between me and Nezuko. Like, it's satisfying stuff. But I think that she's more of a plot device for, the growth of other characters, or whatever the plot really needs her to do, like to create tension in the Hashira meeting when what's-his-face is like, all right, I'm going to cut myself open and let's see if Nezuko attacks me or whatever. Like, I wish that she would do more independently, like just as a character, rather than be stuck to the whims of whatever the mangaka needs her to do at that particular moment.
I think the limits on her character that are in place, kind of given the nature of her role in the story, kind of necessitate that.
Yeah,
because one of the things I praised the show earlier for was that they didn't just use Nezuko as the instant win button, which early on in the show she easily could have been.
Right. Well, I mean, but when she's not being an instant win button, all she's doing is just sitting around and being cute and shrinking down and hanging around in the, like that one scene that everyone is losing their shit over where she shrinks down and she's running around like, she's got like the,
Look at her go.
Yeah, she's got like the little like invincibility star in Yoshi's Island 2. When
I get where you're coming from in the sense that like you see her as a part of the show and you want her to be a bigger part of that show, whereas I see her as serving her role in the narrative, but it's not really her story. So it doesn't really bother me that she's not a bigger part.
But she's also the lead female character of this show.
In theory,
I'm not really sure if that has any bearing on the overall quality of the show.
Just because a Mal page says she's a main character doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
No, well, I mean, I like she's a part of the story. Like, she's Tanjiro's motivation.
If anything, she's just a plot device.
That's what Frank is saying, and he's taking issue with that.
I can understand why, but I mean, that's just kind of how it's written.
I mean,
I don't think it's anything that, like, I can understand why that would annoy you. Like, I do want to see more of her too. I want to see more of her actually fighting and being more than just cute gifs on the internet. But I mean, we're only at, like, as from what I understand, we are only at like the starting line of the series at the moment. If am I correct in that, Colin?
Yes, yeah. I don't know how much longer the series is going to be running. Honestly, I know it's a huge hit right now. The current arc they're in could be the last one. A lot of people are speculating about that, but I don't really think so, because I feel like there'd be an announcement about that.
I was surprised that the next arc of the show is going to be a movie rather than like a second season, and I don't know the way the manga plays out, whether that would be like the appropriate form for it.
Yeah, I'd say if you were going to do a movie that is 100% canon to the story, it may as well be this arc.
I just feel like that's a pretty rare way to go about like making a sequel to a show, especially if they want to continue it past the movie. It's like
most wouldn't be structured to allow for that sort of thing,
right? Like there are only a few like a handful of shows that I can think of that would have like a canon movie bridging the gap between like one season of the show and another.
It works out nicely in this case in that it gets a movie, but it also caused the anime to end with like a lower stakes arc.
Well, I mean,
perhaps as low as you can get. Which, like I said, I don't necessarily think that's a problem. But like, if you were writing this as like an anime only story, you would not structure it like this.
Right. I think that way of ending it is solid enough payoff after
yes, I agree.
How explosive that fight was. I mean, it lasted for multiple episodes, and you really just get a chance to see like the main characters just sort of down on their luck afterwards. Inosuke is like battered and beaten, like his voice is like crushed to shit. And Tanjiro has to go through like that whole recuperation period, and it's good to see. And on top of that, it makes for a good excuse to implement Shinobu's backstory through that scene where he talks to her on the roof. There's a scene that I ultimately really liked because I'm pretty fond of Shinobu. I think that her design is very cool. I think
Shinobu's great.
Her sword design especially is very interesting to me. Like I think that her fighting style like really fits her character because like she's sort of like sadistic. She's got a bit of like a bully side to her. So like the fact that like she fights,
you get to see a little bit of the real Shinobu in a flashback. Because you get like Tanjiro notes like, oh wait, I'm kind of detecting that you're pissed off.
Yeah, I love that. I think I thought that bit was really cool because like getting her in that sort of one-on-one scene with him after you got to see like all of the pillars in the meeting and none of them were particularly like strong characters on their own. Shinobu was the one that I was most interested in learning more about, and her backstory didn't really disappoint. It's like she doesn't necessarily believe that there can be peace between humans and demons, but because it was her sister's dying wish, she's determined to see that through to the end. And I think that's an interesting backstory for her. I'm really interested in seeing like where that goes specifically. I hope that she doesn't die. That would be bad. I don't know spoilers from the manga or anything like that. But ultimately, like my main flaws with the show are like I don't think Zenitsu's character works for me. I really want to see more from Nezuko, and I think that the designs of the show are a little like they need some work. I think
they like all the characters do kind of suffer from main character syndrome, and they're designed to stand out immediately, so these characters are important.
Right.
But I think that gives the show a lot of flavor. Like, yeah, the designs are absolutely absurd, but I kind of like that they're all absurd. Like the author just went for it with all of them. He didn't. They
are Well, you know what? That is one thing. At least they are consistently absurd.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Yes.
It doesn't necessarily excuse it, but
I don't know. It's like yeah, none of the designs are coherent.
Frank, you're the guy who watches JoJo.
Like, I do watch JoJo, but in JoJo, like,
here we go. Come on, JoJo has the most absurd. Yeah, mute yourself. No, JoJo has.
You know what?
JoJo has the most absurd designs of all time.
At least in JoJo, most of the characters wear Gakuran and like variations of. Listen, I'll concede that for now.
It's like. I will say it's more like it's a matter of personal taste.
Yeah, that's
which is perfectly fine. There's nothing that you can really argue about here. It's just like you like it or you don't.
I guess just a random thing to comment on in terms of the designs. I really like the variety of eyes the show has.
That's how we ended. Wait, that's how we ended last time, Matt. We can't end on that.
Really?
Is it? I didn't.
Last time we were talking about this. We noted the eyes, and then we were just hit with silence from everyone, and then we had to move on. It was the lamest way to end the discussion.
Okay.
Well, I did also want to make another small point, and I'm totally on board with I wasn't a huge fan of Zenitsu, but I did enjoy the show's sense of humor overall. In fact, it reminded me a lot of Full Metal Alchemist in how it handled and balanced humor versus storytelling and stuff like that. Especially with the way they designed, the flat beady eye faces whenever something funny was happening. That reminded me a lot of FMA as well. So, even if I didn't enjoy necessarily all the individual humor, I thought the show overall was very funny and balanced that well. Unlike, there's another show this season that's an opposite example of this that we'll talk about later.
Okay.
And it made me appreciate what this show was doing even more.
So I don't personally take much umbrage with Nezuko's place in the show. For me, that character being silenced and having Tanjiro needing to take responsibility for her, making sure that she doesn't go berserk, I think that sort of speaks volumes about the progression later on in the show. So I don't really have a problem with her not being much of her own character outside of how she affects the plot. Because where it goes, it makes coherent sense to me, right? I'm trying not to spoil.
I will trust in you, Colin.
Okay, I'm gonna play the asshole here, but can we fucking wrap it up?
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up.
We're about to wrap
Jesus
it up.
Christ.
You should have watched the show. That's what you should.
Yeah, we gave you plenty of chances, honestly, Kenny.
No, you gave me.
It's okay. Any
Kenny's short-circuiting.
Any final thoughts on Kimetsu no Yaiba?
Kenny's getting upset.
Best might be the best shonen I've watched yet.
It's up there with the best shows of this year.
Yeah, it's great. It's no mob.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree.
I'm not sure if I would consider Mob a shonen. Mob is like an anti-shonen.
Mob's pretty shonen, but
I guess it's shonen-esque. It feels a little too.
It's more traditional shonen than Mob.
I think in terms of the spectacle, it's certainly one of the most eye-popping shows of the year. I think that before I would say that it's one of the best of the year, I think that I don't know. It's probably just personal preference on my part for the most part. But
I mean, if you're gonna avoid paying your taxes, you better put out some fucking shows that look this good.
It's UFOtable, and UFOtable really did a number on just making it pop. If it was another studio David Pro or who animates shonen these days, Toei, it certainly wouldn't have had the award that it has. So
and to be consistently high quality through 26 episodes.
Yeah, no, I mean it's quite
insane.
impressive. It's you see a lot of shows that are able to maintain a certain amount of quality throughout their run, but most UFO shows are this high in quality. It's certainly got that Fate fix, and while I'm waiting for the third Heaven's Feel movie, it seems like a good enough palate cleanser just to sort of whet the appetite before they really knock my socks off with that one. Because Heaven's Feel 2 is still my anime of the year 2019. And I said that it would be anime of the year 2019 in January when I watched a cam rip of it. And so far nothing has beaten it. So we'll see.
I think it's just nice that we can get adaptations like this that go above and beyond. I see a lot of adaptations that really are they do have those moments of great animation, but they're still basically panel to panel adaptations.
Right.
And even with this, you're seeing if you just compare shots, they're completely different. I mean, they really take advantage of the medium.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was my biggest problem with some of the earlier JoJo parts. It was so extremely one-to-one. And even like Golden Wind, when that started, it had that problem as well. It wasn't until like as it got towards the end that they really started to take some liberties with it in that regard, and it really paid off in dividends. And I know none of you guys watch JoJo in here, so I won't.
I've
waste my
watched.
breath on this.
I've watched the first season.
I watched the first season as well.
Yeah,
I'll probably get to the other ones eventually.
Part 3 is
I know about part 3.
Yeah. Part 4
all
is
my normie friends say part 3 is the best. Everyone
they're
below the normie spectrum says that they're not fans of part 3 as much.
Yeah. Part 4 is try, but I'm not going to get too into JoJo because I know like rule 1 of the anime club is
Thank you for following the rules, Frank.
Yeah.
All right.
Kenny, is there something you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, JoJo fucking sucks.
JoJo fucking sucks was not an anime that aired this season. Do you want to try again?
No.
Well, I want to include you because you didn't get to talk during this last one. So, is there an anime?
You guys have been talking for a fucking hour.
No, not quite.
One anime.
I've been keeping track. Not quite. What's the show you want to talk about, Kenny?
Have. It's been what? We've been
1 week
on. We've been on for an hour and 20 minutes and 38.
No, you've been on Skype for an hour and 20.
Yeah, the podcast is only going for like 40 minutes. So, is there a show you want to talk about, Kenny?
No, there's not.
I'll pull
all that bitching for nothing.
Go ahead, Frank.
So, I watched. I don't know if you guys have watched Fire Force.
Yes.
Oh God.
You should have fucking said what you wanted to talk about, Kenny.
Oh no.
So I started watching Fire Force, and I was really endeared by the first couple of episodes. I thought that it had a lot of style, and they did a really phenomenal job with like making it pop. Then unfortunately, the third episode got delayed with everything that happened with Kiyoani, and I like that was some intense shit, and I don't know if like we had a chance to really talk about it on this podcast, but like
we haven't, no. But it's like they even had to make changes to the show because of that.
Yeah.
No, wait, they did?
Yeah. Kenny, it's an anime about fire. Like, yeah.
I know it's an anime about fucking fire. Like, like people died. Yeah, it's sad and everything. Like, did they ever find out like what exactly happened?
Yeah, well, we found out what happened. We don't know what the motive is for why the guy did what he did.
Like, you know what he claimed, but
I mean, did the guy actually work for the company, or did
no? He was just some crazy dude who thought who had a weird. He was just a crazy dude. That's all.
His claim was that they plagiarized something of his, right?
What apparently he was alleging was that they had ripped him off in some way, shape, or form. But the president went on record saying that, like, you know, they've had a multitude of writing contests. You know, a lot of their shows were adapted from novels that were submitted through this writing contest, and they had never received a submission from him or anything like that. So, that seems pretty unlikely. From my understanding,
I hope so, because like that. I mean, I've been very critical of that contest going back, and like it's bizarre that may have been like what triggered all this, at least in this guy's mind.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I as of right now, I'm pretty sure he's still unable to like respond properly to interrogation. I think that he is still only able to respond by like nodding and shaking his head, because he received like some really heavy injuries in the blaze because someone apprehended him, and it was it's this whole big fiasco with it. But anyway, back to Fire Force.
That's a stupid anime.
Yeah, I mean, like Kiyoani. I mean, I could talk about that all day, and I really don't want to, bog down. Now it's October, and that happened in the middle of July. But with Fire Force, I feel like I've been watching Soul Eater as well, because it's by the same guy, and you can really see just how far the influence from that show extends into this one, but without much of what makes Soul Eater like work as well.
It's funny because I had no idea it was by him until I saw the villain's design. I was like, oh, this looks like something from Soul Eater.
You can see like the skull at the beginning of like the Fire Force episodes. Like that's literally like Death's mask in Soul Eater. I mean, like,
once you know, you just see it everywhere. Like the influence is all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because like in concept, the idea seems like it would work so well, and it's just so stylized. Like it's a mix between like David Pro animators and like X Shaft animators, and you can really tell the Shaft influence in there. And I thought that I would like it a lot more than I ended up liking what I saw, but there's just something about it that's not quite there. The character writing is like shallower than shallow from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. It's all over the place.
I mean, it's frustrating. Like I watched up to when they introduced like the sexy non-villain character, and he beat her by punching her in the face too hard, and like there's just something about it that just isn't quite working. And I think part of the reason might be because I'm just not invested in like the main character or like his plights. Like everything that's going on with him, and like it's like, oh, he smiles when he's nervous, and he has like this like demonic grin and everything like that. Like it's kind of just there because it's it's to be a quirk and not necessarily because it makes for compelling storytelling. And even the fights, like they just don't always have the payoff that they should, considering the concept. Like the fight with the Joker character, who utilizes like his playing card themed smoke and everything like that. Like it should be a lot cooler than it is, but because of the way that like it's framed and set in that dark room, and I had to imagine that some of this is because they had to make those changes due to the arson. It's just unfortunate circumstance all around. And so that was my feeling about it up until about a week ago. And then I watched this little old anime movie by Studio Trigger called Promare.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh boy.
Which is more or less just like a better Fire Force.
Real? Oh, so it's also about firefighting.
Yeah, well, it's literally a show about people that like they all of a sudden people just turn like spontaneously combust and turn into these flame monsters just like Fire Force.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and so the main character's team is Burning Rescue, which is essentially just like the Fire Force, and there's also the Freeze Force, which is like an antagonistic force to the Fire Force. Very similar to how the Fire Force is split up into factions that are all sort of doing their own thing. Like ultimately the direction that they go with the writing is pretty different, because Fire Force is pretty how to wrap up Fire Force's writing in a nutshell. It's basically just
rote.
The Fire Force is all splintered with their own agendas, and he has to like uncover the secret of the Fire Force or whatever. Whereas,
which he apparently just does really fast.
Yeah, and then Promare is more about like, it uses these the flame demons, like the Burnish as they call them, as like sort of an allegory for segregation. Because the people that spontaneously combust, they're oppressed in society as people who are like people who are basically just going to blow at a moment's notice. And there's a terrorist group called the Mad Burnish that are going around, and they have like this primal urge to start fires, and they give all of the Burnish a bad name, essentially. And Gallo is forced to realize that maybe the Burnish and, the non-Burnish aren't so different after all. So the core principles of the show are very different. They just happen to have, like, very similar plot elements and very similar like aesthetics in terms of like, we're gonna make our flames really funky colored, and we're gonna have like these like chaotic fight scenes and everything. It's kind of unfortunate timing, because to me, Promare was like everything that I wanted Fire Force to be.
Yeah, the show sounds like it has a lot of unfortunate timing.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm like a trigger buff. I have a real soft spot, especially for Imaishi, and Promare is just
you did like Kizniver.
I know Kizniver was.
Let's not go into Keys.
Let's not go into Keys.
Yeah, I thought
So Frank, would you say Promare is the only good thing Trigger's ever done?
No, I wouldn't say that, because I loved Space Patrol Luco, and
Oh my god!
I thought both Little Witch Academia OVAs were phenomenal, and Kill la Kill. We can say what we want about Kill la Kill, but it's alright.
Thank you for this, Kenny.
Well, I want to say something. I haven't been able to say anything.
Poor Kenny.
So Fire Force, I was actually thinking about this today. Fire Force is like the easiest watch for a show I have no investment in. Like every week, I have no problem getting through an episode and being mildly entertained, but I have no engagement with the show beyond that. And one of the things I was talking about just before with Yaiba, how that show has a very excellent balance between its comedy and action. The show has no balance. In fact, the comedy in the show is what I think actively turns me off from the characters. Every joke, every scenario they come up with to try and make you laugh just falls flat on its face.
So it's really frustrating, because Soul Eater, for the most part, as I've been watching it, despite it being a show from 2008, it holds up in a lot of regards. I think the visuals are fucking stunning, and the atmosphere with it is really, really cool. And the only place where I would say that it's aged pretty badly is the humor. And Fire Force is bogged down by like all of the same humor problems that Soul Eater has. It's almost like
he didn't grow from it.
No, he not even that he didn't grow from it, but that he's leaning harder into like some of the gross stuff that's in Soul Eater. Yeah, he didn't grow. Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because Soul Eater has this character called Blair, and she just basically, her whole bit is basically just, she's a cat, and, she has a human form, and then when she turns into a human form, she just kind of runs around naked, because she's a cat. And, she, shoves her boobs in people's faces, and Soul gets a nosebleed, and then Maka hits Soul because he gets a nosebleed, and this, that, the other. And then Fire Force has this character that's like, oh, I am the cat witch girl, and people, whenever they're near me, have an inclination to grope me or whatever the case may be, and then I'm gonna hit them. And it's like, this isn't funny. It was never funny. It wasn't funny in 2008, and it's not funny in 2019. And I don't know why, he insists on thinking that this form of humor is still funny, but it's frustrating.
So just to be clear, on paper, there's nothing wrong with fan service or whatever. If you want booby scenes here and there, whatever the crap, right? I think there are many instances of it being implemented at the wrong place, wrong time. Where my reaction is, nobody asked for this. Maybe Steve did.
But even then, not always, because the show is... it doesn't work for me.
The first time the fan service bit happened with the cat girl, I was so confused.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's weird.
As to what the fuck just happened.
Well, because they just drop terms and don't explain them. It's like we're supposed to kind of gleam what's happening, but...
Okay, so for comparison, there's this wonderful show called Prison School.
Oh, God.
No, he's right.
And
this
they
is
have
the best
a
example of
character.
this.
They have a character in there they literally start referring to as Rube Goldberg Girl, because the entire gag around her character is that she finds herself in sexual situations through ridiculous Rube Goldberg trap machines. Basically, that she sets off this domino sequence of events that always put her make her exposed, right? And just by comparison, the cat girl in this show, I didn't. Okay, so first and foremost, the first time this gag landed, or on its face, basically, I didn't even understand that the joke was supposed to be that she found herself in this fan service situation, and it made no sense that it was fan service, and that was the joke, right? It was only through subsequent use of it where I realized that the joke was supposed to be that it makes no sense that she's in this situation. And it just kind of is indicative of how Fire Force as a whole is really underwritten. And we were just talking about how Tanjiro is a character who, despite being completely static throughout the entire story, is still a character that feels believable because his attitude and actions feel informed by what we know of him. And
his simplicity really works, honestly.
Yeah, so by comparison, Shinra really just feels like Mr. Protagonist Man, who he's like, his desire is to be a hero, and it's like, yo, what exactly about Shinra's background of his entire family burning up and dying and his brother going missing really feels like it carries over to his character now?
None of it really does, other than the fact that like he smiles like that when he's nervous still. Like, I mean, like, it's like, oh, people look at him as though like he's some kind of like laughing Joker sort of character.
Yeah,
like, you know, I saw the Joker yesterday, so it's like, you know, it's like, oh, well, I burst into hysterical laughter at inopportune moments. Ha ha ha! It's like literally Fire Force. Like,
yeah, it's a character quirk, but it's not a character.
Yeah, or when Shinra and Arthur go undercover at station at the what is it? Do I call it Station 1? Is that what it's called? Company 1.
Yeah.
Company 1.
Yeah.
They go undercover at Company 1, and there's supposed to be some, you'd expect some investigative phase for this, right? Instead, they just stumble upon the guy turning somebody into an infernal, and they just follow him. And they immediately narrow it down to 2 people, right? It just feels like it feels like I'm on autopilot here.
Yeah. It's like the author knows where he wants to go, but like so hasn't figured out the best way to get there.
Yeah, it's so sloppily underwritten.
And meanwhile, forgive me if I'm mistaken, is Fire Force supposed to be like a 51 episode show?
I think like 48 episodes or something like that. Oh
my god.
Yeah, I don't know where this show is going to go. Obviously, it goes somewhere, but it's hard to see it from where we're at now because we've already gone so far so quickly.
I've asked people. What? Was that somebody else?
Oh. What?
Is that somebody else?
No. Sorry, I'm gonna. 1 second.
Okay.
Oh no. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I've asked people who are manga readers.
Frank's gonna die.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I have people who are manga readers. Hey, does this show improve? Does it go anywhere? And the general consensus that I get is no. And I know how that can be sometimes with depending on the community bubble that you're in. I was just expecting to hear more counter arguments. It's like, hey, what you see with what you get. If you're not enjoying it right now, or if you've got problems with it right now, they're probably not going to be solved later.
You hear that from a lot of shonen fans, but only because these series go so long that eventually all of them almost always hit that point. Mm-hmm. But they usually come back with, okay, well, it's good until this arc. So you're not even hearing that?
I'm really not.
We've already hit the peak.
Okay, I'm hearing. I think the most positive opinion I heard was that after Hibana, it improves a little bit. And they felt like, and they said that Hibana, like the first arc with Hibana being the first major villain, they feel like that's a weak introduction. And boy howdy, it sure is. But at the same time, I'm not really sure if I've heard a lot of great stuff about what comes after. I've heard one guy, I saw one guy say, okay, the arc in Japantown, that's good. We're just entering that right now. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I'm still trying to remain open-minded, and it's an easy watch, as Steve said. Mm-hmm. It's light fun to the point where I I would almost recommend it, but there's so much better stuff that I could recommend over it.
It is just weird to see like a show of this quality getting such high quality animation.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost, I don't want to, like, I feel weird calling it a waste, like, because like there are shows that probably deserve it better, but like at least it has something going for it, I guess. At times, I don't know. It's just really hard to envision myself ever caring what happens to these characters.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that I don't really dislike this show at all.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
It's not terrible. It's just like, it is what it is.
Well, I'm frustrated with it because it's not quite what I was hoping for it to be. You know, I like David Pro well enough, and I certainly like Shafts well enough. And judging from, like, you know, the pre-release materials and everything like that, I had never seen Soul Eater before I started Fire Force. The whole entire thing just seemed like it was a match made in heaven, because it just looked like this crazy cool spectacle with interesting looking fights and, you know, cool character designs. And I was really looking forward to seeing it all come together. It's a shame that it's pretty disappointing in that regard. And the fact that the character writing is so shallow really doesn't help it. It does feel like a show that's sort of trapped in, like, you know, this sort of 10 years ago period where I feel like it might have been a little more successful if it came out a while back. I was surprised to learn that, like, right now the manga is, like, maybe, like, 15 volumes in, probably even more than that. Because I honestly don't quite know how they can, like, keep momentum for that long. But then again, I'm at that point right now with Soul Eater where I'm like 25 episodes in, and it's like, how the hell are we going to wring another 51 episodes out of this? Oh, wait, it's because the anime wildly diverges at around, like, episode 38 or so. I don't quite know, like, you know, what the deal is with that, but we'll see.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a complete waste of time, like, but I don't know. I also kind of hate being caught in this in between of, like, yeah, like, I don't mind watching it, but I also, like, wouldn't mind dropping it either. So
is it like one of those shows that you can just, like, kind of put up, like, in the background, like, play it in the background, and
yeah, pretty much.
just like,
Yeah, I was really hoping that it would just be so
God
much
damn.
more than a show that would just come up in the back. Oh, did I, like, come out of nowhere with that? Like,
No, you came out very loud.
oh, sorry. I don't know.
Jesus. You're gonna blow out my fucking earphones.
Sorry. We'll fix that in post.
If I remember. Yeah, so anyone want to offer some final thoughts on Fire Force?
Yeah, sure, I didn't watch it.
It all right.
Watch Premiere.
Inoffensive.
I actively avoided watching this show after seeing the thing where the guy grabs the girl's boob.
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah, I get that's easily the thing that Matt would latch onto, and I totally get it. So yeah, I don't blame you. Like, it doesn't. I think that the first time it happens was the absolute worst, but it still comes back for more. So
That's like
you probably made the right call.
That is the most notable, like, screenshot I have seen from the show.
And anytime you're like, this was a really dumb moment. What are you, gay?
Oh god, imagine watching the fucking dub version on Toonami where they edited that scene even more, so it's even more confusing.
Oh, man.
Shit.
What?
Did they really censor that part?
Yeah, they did.
Oh my god. So you don't even understand what the fuck just happened.
No,
Like,
not at all.
I barely understood what the fuck happened when I saw it the first time.
Kenny.
Yeah.
Before we go to break, do you just want to quickly talk about Accelerator, because we were the only ones who watched it?
Started out kind of strong and took a fucking nosedive.
The JC staff way.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah, so
How do we stop them, bros?
So this is the most, so it's weird because, like, yeah, in terms of animation quality, it absolutely took a nosedive, and I even saw someone confirmed that they basically outsourced the last half of the show to other
Are
like,
you fucking
animators, so-
shitting me?
Yeah, that was the big reason for the decline in quality. They just started outsourcing it, but they were doing like 3 or 4 shows this season. So
It's
like,
not. It's not only that, but like even like the story wasn't even that interesting.
so here's the weird thing about Accelerator. I have actually read the manga. I have the first 3 volumes like sitting right next to me on my shelf here. And I've also read from people who know a lot more about the Index franchise in that this is actually a good adaptation of the manga, because the manga itself is even worse. The anime
Wait,
actually
whoa! You said the manga? How?
So the anime actually takes time to correct a lot of inconsistencies with the story and the characters, and even added remember that episode that was just the backstory of what was going on, where they, it was a big flashback. That was entirely anime original. The manga did not have that, so it didn't even give you an explanation of what was really going on in this story. It was kind of lightly hinted at, and the character motivations didn't conflict. Or did conflict with what was going on. So they actually took the time in the anime to make up this whole backstory that filled in the details so that the story actually made fucking sense. And like there are a lot of that. Like there's a lot of little inconsistencies with the rest of the Index franchise that this adaptation also corrected on. So it's actually a good adaptation of the manga. It's just that the story itself is kind of nothing. And it's kind of 2 reasons. One, they've already done this story before. Like, how many times do we need a story about someone trying to get to level 6 in the Index universe?
It's getting fucking old.
Yeah, it goes there way too many times. And the problem is, like, I really like Accelerator. You really like Accelerator.
I do, yeah.
He's a good character, but he's not necessarily a good main character. Because he's basically invincible. So, this show is good if you want to see him beat up on some fools for a bit. But like, there's nothing that can really challenge him, and his character development happens elsewhere in Index, so they can't really put anything that conflicts with that. So as a result, this is kind of like a nothing side story, and it can be entertaining for people like us who like the character of Accelerator, and wanted more of this. But also, it's like there's absolutely no value. It's not like Railgun, where like you can watch Railgun without having watched Index. Like we made Funk watch it, and he enjoyed it. You could not watch it. We did make Funk watch it. He did enjoy it. Surprisingly, he enjoyed it. You could not watch the Accelerator anime without having to watch like all of Index up to a certain point, and even then, like you might not even understand some things. And Railgun, you probably actually have to watch Railgun too, because it's the more complete version of Accelerator's story. So.
I was just thinking about that the other day. I was just like, if I were to recommend like like a certain like series like Railgun Index, it's just like, where do I start them out? And I was just like, could I just make them watch the first series of Railgun, or should I
you ideally you would watch the first season of Index first, but you can watch the first season of Railgun and it works. But in order to watch this show, you'd have to watch the second season of Railgun, which means you would have to watch the first season of Railgun, and then you would have to watch the first couple arcs of Index 2, and then you could watch the show to understand it.
God. I don't know. It seems like it's just like it's so fucking convoluted.
It is, and I enjoyed this show for what it was, but that's only because I really like the character.
It was enjoyable, but it
it's no Railgun.
Like that first arc when with those I don't even know who the fuck they were. Like it was so like fucking pointless. Where it was damn. I don't know. They were like, it was only like a few episodes, and the characters, but they were gone. Like it was like it was just stupid.
And also, this show definitely suffered from the do not do CG in daylight syndrome, because it really exposed how bad the CG was.
God, no.
Like when he was fighting those big robots out in the daytime, it's like, oh man, this looks fucking bad.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it suffered, and it just like it really concerns me of like what the next Railgun's gonna be like.
I think Railgun will be fine because
I'm
and
really,
Railgun sells a ton, like way more than Index does, so they
Index
have reason to
was
put.
fucking awful, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
they wanted to get Index 3 out of the way because it was so old at that point. But I think Railgun is different. I think they'll put the money into Railgun to make it look good, but we'll see. It's JC Staff. You never fucking know. If they're doing like 8 other shows that season, Railgun can suffer. So
stop doing fucking like 50 million shows and just like concentrate on like a couple. Like you don't. Like, you're making.
The good news,
money.
Kenny, is that the president of JC Staff listens to our podcast, so he'll get your message.
I hope so.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break and come back with more anime. Hello, and welcome back to the Luckycast. How about we move on to Vinland Saga? Because I know a few people here have watched that.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Another great anime that Kenny has refused to watch. Any comment, Kenny?
Yeah, can we move on?
No, we actually got to talk about this because it's one of the best shows of the season.
No, it's not.
I think Matt and Colin will back me up here.
Yes, definitely.
Matt, shut
Pretty
up.
darn good.
Colin, shut up.
So, I mean, I guess I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this show is really anime suffers a bit from redundancy. A lot of shows just kind of do the same old thing. I was not expecting to watch a Viking anime that was also an anti-war anime when watching this show. And this show is fucking great at that. There's a really great cast of characters here. And really great use of these characters. Like, I know when they first introduced Askeladd. Is that how you say it? It's like Askeladd. Askeladd.
I believe the proper pronunciation would be something like Askeladd. Yeah, Askeladd.
But in the show, they say Ashalad.
Yeah, they say Ashladd
because they're Japanese. But like Ashlad in the show, when I first saw him and they first introduced him, I was thinking, this guy is not going to be like, there's no way this guy is going to be a main character. But then it turns out he's actually like the best fucking character in the whole show, despite being kind of a like horrible person. He's actually like, it's amazing how they turn this guy who literally murders this kid's dad into his father figure to a certain extent. And I mean,
how else are you going to become someone's father figure?
I guess so. It's amazing how much this guy, this show does a really good job of making you like characters that are just realistically terrible people, but they're just likable because of their personalities and how they handle the situations they find themselves in. Like the main character Thorfinn is interesting because he's kind of he's this, dumb kitty edgelord who is still butthurt over his dad being murdered. But then, like, there's a scene where he like falls asleep and gets this vision from his dad for the first time in years. And what they immediately do is, like, when he sees his dad, he like turns into himself as a kid again for that moment. Just like to emphasize, this guy, he might look like this little edgelord on the outside, but he's still just like this little kid who just wants his dad back. And it's just so, like, everything, all the little stuff like that is so well done. It was a pretty predictable moment, but I also like the part where it kind of goes back to the village where they're from, and there's a whole scene where his sister, like, first hears news of his dad getting killed, and her brother missing, and she just kind of goes about her day, and she doesn't really seem to react, but then she finally just kind of bursts down crying after everything. And it's like there's so many little like of those moments in this show. This show has a lot of just like not a whole lot of big fights, or there are big fights, but they're kind of few and far between. There's a lot of moments of just characters talking and walking around and planning things, and it just really makes it all. It feels outside of the shonen moments, like the guy, like big man killing everybody with a giant fucking tree trunk,
or the ear,
or the ear, or the ear. Like the show does feel pretty realistic for anime standards, which is nice.
It walks like a fine line, bizarrely enough, because it's like, it's such an exaggerated telling of a real historical story. To the point, I was telling Colin about this, like, people were like, don't read the Wikipedia article on Thorfinn because it'll spoil this anime. It's like, oh, okay, I won't then. And that's like, yeah, it's a period of time that's not typically done in anime, and that's super interesting, and it has like a clear anime take on it. But despite the fact that it can get really over the top, in terms of these characters like physically conflicting with each other, just the emotional, more grounded character moments like still don't come at the expense of that, and it doesn't. They don't like they don't butt heads. Like it all kind of works together naturally. Like the to me the most compelling thing about the story, and I kind of been a bit of a drag the last couple episodes because it's gotten a bit away from this. Like I like the relationship between Thorfinn and Ashalad as a driving force of the show, less so than the early like year 1000 politics of Danish and English wars. Like I'm not as on board for that. Like it's like I said, it's kind of dragged a bit these past couple episodes where it's like there's just a slow build up to an inevitable conflict, but just the actual the characters themselves are so well done that it's just like even during the slower periods of time, that is what's driving the story forward, and I really enjoy that.
And there's just so many of these moments that really help develop the characters. It's just very well directed as well. Like there's like the one episode where he gets away from like where Thorfinn gets away from his little group of bandits and gets basically very short period of time basically gets adopted by that English family.
I think that's like the best episode of the show.
That might be the best. Like just that part where it's revealed where it's revealed to the woman what Thorfinn really is now, and how he's just basically this killing machine, and just like the reaction and everything, and just like the realization of what is exactly happening here.
By the way, that's the last episode. No. That's the last episode where he has his voice actress, and just gotta give quick credit to this lady because she freaking killed it.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. That scream at the end of what was it, the 4th episode, I think. Oh my gosh, she must have been recovering for a while after that one. Also, it was animated great. I think they have it so Thorfinn was screaming so hard he starts drooling, which those sorts of I guess embarrassing quirks in dramatic moments. A lot of times, fiction is very afraid to portray those, like a really ugly cry where you snot up. And so I don't know. It's kind of cool sometimes where you get to see that very raw, very real display of emotion coming from a freaking anime of all things.
Yeah.
I do feel like the show, I completely agree that the show is at its best when characters are just talking to each other. I do disagree that everything blends perfectly. I feel like the fight choreography or the fight direction, the direction of the action is a little bit at odds with the tone of the show.
It can be a little wacky sometimes.
It doesn't take me out of it. Like that's kind of my bar, I guess. Like
yeah, it doesn't completely take me out of it.
It's not distracting. It doesn't ruin everything else.
The most distracting the show got was the episode that apparently was the actual adaptation of the first chapter of the manga with the short stubby dude that looked like a frog. I forget what episode it was.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that is an episode that feels like a pilot.
I mean, that apparently is like the first chapter of the manga, and also the manga was originally in a shonen magazine, not a seinen. It's not a seinen, which makes sense. So this was originally supposed to be like a shonen, which I guess kind of explains why some of the scenes can be a little wacky at times. Like there is also that one fight with Thorkill where he's stabs him in the palm. And he's just throwing him around because of that. Throwing Thorfinn around because of that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of really over-the-top stuff like that.
The reason that works for me is if you envision it as someone years down the line retelling the story and how they would exaggerate it. Like, that's... The way it's being shown to us is kind of the way someone would tell the story.
I can see that. That's kind of a fun way of looking at that. I do like the action in the show. Like,
it is by the Attack on Titan studio, and you can tell. And
it usually looks good. There are some parts of the show where it gets a little weird. Like I think it was episode 11 where there's this one moment that's like kind of a distant shot where it shows Thorkill, and he kind of looks like an eraser. Like he just looks like he kind of looks like he's doing his best. He's doing his best Roblox impression. It gets a little weird sometimes, but I think that was kind of more of a budget episode, because then all of a sudden episode 12 just looks amazing, and it's like, okay, they really wanted to go all out with 12. I guess since it's the end of the core. I also really liked again, we're going back to poetry here. How episode 12 basically ends in the same exact position that Thor's and his group was in at the beginning of the show before, Thor's gets killed. Mm-hmm. They're basically in the same exact position. It's like, I get it.
Hey, what do we call our good guy in our Viking anime? I don't know. We can't just call him Thor. What do we call him? Thors.
Speaking of Thor.
What do we call our bad guy in our Viking anime? I don't know. Well, we can't just call him Loki. How do we call him Floki?
So speaking of Thor, I just found it immensely hilarious in, like, it was either episode 11 or 12, because I watched them both, like, back to back. There's, like, a solid minute where they just have the guys marching and just shitting on Jesus Christ and talking about how Thor and Odin were so much better than him. It's, like, not the kind of conversation you expect to hear in an anime, but it was just kind of, like, out of context, just very hilarious.
I do really like moments like that. And just having the priest, this, like, drunk priest here who's just kind of this pathetic character despite being, like, a Christian dude.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is that they're kind of hinting towards that changing world more and more with that Christianization, because that right at the end of after they're done making fun of him, there's one guy who says, "Hey, I want to hear more about that Jesus guy."
Tell me about love. Tell me more about this love thing.
Yeah, I did like that because it kind of shows
that priest's name was Albert Einstein.
I do like little moments like that. Like there's a lot of this show is not dumb. It's very well crafted, and it feels like
it's pretty melancholy. And I really like that tone.
Yeah, it's very melancholy, it has these like really awesome action scenes, but then it like also has these moments that just make you feel really bad, and it's violent too. Like this show, like it's fucking brutal.
I haven't found anything of Thorfinn's teenage years as compelling as the childhood stuff, but I'm still I'm still very engaged.
I am on board for his inevitable revenge. Like, I'm always down for a really good revenge story, especially like Matt was talking about how this one was like, you also have that other voice in his head saying this is not the right way, and just having that internal conflict for Thorfinn is really
I'm
compelling.
doubtful that the revenge will play out as you might expect a revenge story.
But that's fine. That's even better.
Yeah.
One thing I really hope, like, part of me kind of hopes that at some point, like, Ashlad just kind of dies without Thorfinn.
Oh, and he just gets robbed of his moment?
And he just gets robbed of it. That's something that I kind of expect to happen, especially with all the stuff. Like, there's a lot of.
I feel like that'd be better.
It feels like there's a lot of build-up to Askeladd either getting killed or just dying of old age. Because it feels like they've been talking about him getting older a lot. And there have been these interactions with him and that helmet dude. I forget his name.
Just
Bjorn?
his helmet, dude.
Bjorn?
Yeah, Bjorn.
Never takes off his helmet.
Never takes off that fucking helmet. It's like night, everybody's sitting down asleep. Bjorn's walking up with his fucking helmet.
There's these moments with those two where it feels like Ashlad feels like this very he feels like this very regretful character. Like he still does what he has to do, and he still seems to kind of enjoy himself, but you can hint a bit of he seems like he's kind of heading in the direction that Thor's was heading in, or that Thor's inevitably did head in when he abandoned war. It feels like he might be going that way.
Oh, okay, wait. I gotta talk about probably I think maybe my favorite scene in this entire show is that scene after Thor's is dead and Floki and Aslad sit down together. They talk about, hey, he's fucking dead. And Floki, he wants to hear about how he died.
Mm-hmm.
And Aslad just responds saying, it was just an ordinary death.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that scene because that's not Askeladd disrespecting Thor's. That's him actually paying him a huge amount of respect by denying Floki the satisfaction of hearing about how Thor's died.
Right.
Show's on point.
Show's on point. Yeah.
I guess the only other thing, like one thing I wasn't a big fan of that kind of took me out of the show was Thor's just kind of dying standing up.
Well, Thor's also, didn't he like jump 30 feet in the opening scene of the show? That's what I mean when the action is at odds.
Yeah, like moments like that, I think, I don't know, for some reason him dying standing up just kind of took me out a little bit more. Mainly because it's trying to be sad, and I just kind of...
Well, I think it's trying to be badass. Like, that's a badass way to die.
I know, that's what it's trying to do, but I can't help but just kind of giggle at that a little bit. Because, like, that's kind of funny. Like, that's, like, something I would expect from JoJo, not from...
Don't say the forbidden words.
Not from historical show.
Don't worry, Frank's not here right now.
Oh, no.
Can't hurt you.
He can't.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Kanata no Astra.
Oh, okay.
Because this ended up kind of being the Cookie Monster show of the season. For good and bad reasons, honestly.
I'm taking my headphones off.
Well, you can talk about it, like, we won't spoil the last episode if you want, and if we do, we'll let you know, Kenny. You can talk about it with us for a while if you want. But, yeah, this is, it's kind of a weird show for me because I went in with a lot of excitement for it, just finding out, like, what it was about. Like, I was totally on board for a, quote, anime lost in space. And, as we kind of got along, they introduced very early this concept of the traitor among the group. which was an interesting choice, but I really disliked how they kept going to that well right after Kanata, who was the lead of the show, said maybe we shouldn't pursue finding out who the traitor is. It'll kind of destroy the cohesion of our group. And then you get 3 episodes in a row of, is this person a traitor? Cliffhanger, immediate start of the next episode. Oh, this person's totally in the clear. Like,
no, they kept dragging it along.
They did, and I got that was the point of the show I got very frustrated with. But like a lot of the payoffs towards the end of the show do kind of make that work. It's a show that I really had a big problem with early on. But it corrected it in a way that was totally not prepared for. And it speaks to how well I felt like once we got away from just the trader business, how the show kept escalating its twist, making the revelation of what this world was and who these characters are way, way, way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I thought this is just going to be a simple survival show of people stuck in space and trying to get back home. And it's way, way more than that. Because at the start of the show, you come to realize very quickly that these characters are all uniquely suitable to survive this situation. Like, you have a character who knows how to pilot a ship. You have a character who's super athletic. You have a character with knowledge of biology. You have a character with knowledge of medicine. Like, they were all kind of too perfect for this scenario, and I thought that kind of took away from the survival aspect of it.
Like when you send people into space, they all have their own personal characteristic of or knowledge of what they.
Yeah, but the thing is, these were just school kids, and this was just a field trip.
I know. It's fucking asinine.
No,
shit,
but it wasn't like how we it's in the future where space travel is so commonplace that you wouldn't need to have all this training to go to space. It's just kind of a common. It's just like flying is for us now. But when you get to the revelation that these kids are actually clones of their parents and were basically being bred so their parents could take over their bodies, because they were all involved in a illegal cloning experiment, and there's mind transfer, and they got sent on this trip to kill them all. It's like you get all these reveals that not only make the show more interesting, but address a lot of the problems that the show brought up before, and I wasn't sure it was actually going to answer. The reason they're all uniquely suitable for this trip is because they were all raised to be basically perfect clones of their parents, and have all these things that their parents would desire when they took over their bodies. It's it was just a really interesting way to resolve a problem that I thought was going to ruin the show for me. And it doesn't stop there. We ultimately get to this big twist that the planet they're going to that we all assumed was Earth was not actually Earth.
Yeah. With the I can't remember what her name is, but some Russian chick that they found on some random fucking planet.
It's just I was just I going through the show, I just felt the whole time this is kind of not well written, but then every revelation of it, for the most part, kind of corrected that assumption of mine. And it's not often I get surprised by a show like that. It feels like a lot of shows you can peg very early on what it's about. But this show just was not like that at all, and I totally appreciated that.
Yeah,
and was one of the biggest reasons why I ended up enjoying it so much.
A lot of twists.
How about you, Colin? How'd you feel about it?
And I'm gonna take my headset off.
Well, I wasn't just gonna jump into spoilers, but okay.
Sure, Steve, should I?
You might. We might get there now.
Okay, all right.
I thought it was good. The thing about the traitor twist that kind of bothered me throughout the episodes was that I felt like the only suspect was Shars. After after they talked about him just a little bit, it didn't feel like everything was cleared up around the character. So I'm like, the whole time I'm thinking, okay, when are they gonna clear Shars's name? And it's just like, oh, I guess it is Shars.
Maybe, yeah, you're totally right. I guess in the time I was like a bit too like willing to accept the explanation that he gave, like all the other characters were. But yeah, you're totally right in retrospect.
Yeah. I think there are some odd shifts in what the story is. Like we have the reveal that they're clones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that this comes out of nowhere, because it makes sense in context, right?
And they had dropped enough to...
Yeah, it's like this mystery was never really posed to us. And then at the end of an episode, they're just like, oh, hey, you guys look kind of similar. Let's DNA test you. And then you're like, oh, we're all clones. And you're like, whoa, I guess this is the plot now.
Well, like, so, yes, but also they did establish very early on, like, they understood that there was some connection between all of them that made them targets for being killed. And, like, they weren't always actively looking for that explanation, but it was always kind of there in the background.
Yeah, I just feel like the way they stumble upon it is just kind of an awkward shift to it.
That's fair.
And then there's also the Earth is not Earth reveal, which
is
again
a great reveal, but
everything is coherent. But it's another moment where you just think, oh, I guess this is the show now, because obviously what makes the reveal fun is that you never question that it's not Earth. You just assume it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, because there is no question, it's the quote payoff of it not being Earth just kind of hits, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm in for the ride. Like, I'm not really shocked. I'm just kind of going, but I am going with it.
I think there's value in that, though. Like, just having a show be a roller coaster. Like, if you know, I obviously I did think there was strong enough character writing that, like, that aspect of the show was able to sustain itself. It made me ultimately come to like a lot of these characters that I didn't think I was going to care for. So I do give the show credit for that. But just the, like I said, roller coaster nature of the show can have some value itself in terms of being entertaining.
Yeah, definitely. Even though, and this might sound strange, because obviously when you look at the world they live in, it is a very different place. But I felt like the planet literally not being Earth and Earth being destroyed. Sorry, is Kenny not listening anymore?
Well, I mean, that's, you find out about that.
Yeah.
For last
anyway,
episode.
Earth being destroyed has less bearing on the plot than I thought it would. Obviously, the show's basically wrapping up at that point, but
they do kind of resolve that.
They resolve it, yeah. They resolve it, yeah. But it's much less. It feels much less pertinent than the characters being clones.
You are right, but at the same time, I feel like, to me as someone watching, like, that hit me a bit harder.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's just if Shars's family, right, his royal family, that's probably the most bearing that the whole Earth twist has on the plot overall.
Mm-hmm.
Like how his family came to power, basically. That's the most important thing.
I will say, like, as much as I did like that twist, there was one really dumb thing that I found about it that I just couldn't help but feel like the author was so in love with this idea that, like, even though he couldn't fully reconcile the direction he wanted to go with it, he still went ahead with this twist. And that's the idea that, you know, humanity has years and years of foreknowledge that an asteroid is going to come destroy Earth. And they have technology to transport people between planets, but they do not have technology to destroy or divert the asteroid. Like that aspect of it, like, did rub me the wrong way. because it feels like that would be a much easier task than wormhole technology. But I digress.
Why not just take the asteroid and push it somewhere else?
Why not just
if you guys are questioning
somewhere?
this, you're gonna hate from me.
So
I mean, it's always in the context of what the show's trying to do. But
there's also the fact that once they move, you ask the question, okay, well, how did they cover everything up? How did they do the whole cover up of this move happening? And apparently it's just everyone just stayed quiet about it when they had kids. They just didn't say anything.
So
it's like they just didn't say anything.
I thought I was gonna hate that more, but I kind of bought it when when they basically explain, hey, yeah, like half of Earth died. We kind of want to avoid this. I'm down with the notion of that. Even if it does feel a bit implausible,
Yeah.
I can buy the feeling of what they wanted to do enough that I could work with that.
I'm mostly bugged by it. I can't really wrap my head around the explanation really just being, I just didn't feel like talking about it.
Yeah, but I also guess it's maybe if we lived in a world where half the Earth was destroyed, we might have different feelings about how we go about acting as a species going forward. But it would be a kind of monumental task to accomplish, and they do skirt over it a bit, but the sentiment I was willing to accept.
All right, Steve, but how do you feel about haircuts?
Don't like them. I think it. Okay, this is I've come to the conclusion this is absolutely my most despised anime trope.
Okay.
Better not watch the rest of Monogatari.
Hey, this character had growth. Let's cut their hair to show that. And then adding insult to injury, took away the glasses too. That
you would hate Bakemonogatari.
That bothered me so fucking much. I get it, but please, can we, you don't need to physically show us that the character has grown. We trust you.
It's a Japanese thing.
I know it is. I know it is. It still bothers the fuck out of me. Because long hair is superior. Going on a limb here.
And that's why it's not a 9 for Steve.
It wasn't going to be regardless, but it was still, I was figuring this maybe a 6, for a while.
I was cruising on 6 for a while, and it made it to a 7.
Did you finish this, Frank?
I didn't even start it.
Oh, okay. And Matt,
I thought Frank wasn't listening. I thought he checked out.
And Matt, you dropped it, right?
I popped it.
I watched the first episode a couple weeks ago. I watched the first episode apparently on the 19th of September, originally with the intention of finishing it. And I was like, okay, I can kind of get behind the premise of this show. Characters are kind of one note, but that's okay. And then the other day, I started watching the second episode, and it immediately starts with wacky shonen sound effects. The one guy pulling out a bug net and being like, "Check out my bug net, guys." The girl looking at a giant dragon, being like, "Oh, the dragon is so kawaii." And I'm just like, "Oh no, these are the characters." I just came to the realization that these are the characters, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this anymore.
I think you would have,
and I just kind of dropped it.
If you had stuck with it, I think you would have been more okay with it. But I get the initial reaction.
Huh?
I get the initial reaction.
I just can't. This is the same exact reason. This exact thing is why I got so frustrated at that one episode of Yaiba where they introduced the pillars. Because it's the exact same situation where it's here's our characters, here's the serious one, here's the ditzy girl, here's the confident guy who has a dark past, here's the lolly, here's the shy girl, here's the cute guy. It's like, oh god.
And
Matt,
they all slay demons. Wait, no,
Matt-
sorry, they go into space. They go into space.
Yeah.
I may have to break this to you, but I think you hate fiction. Because I get it, but like archetypes are archetypes.
Archetypes are archetypes, but they can be a little bit more than this. And
Yeah,
you
but
can,
they
you
do-
can do you can do a little better.
You kind of
than
have to
this.
give it some time for
I-
people to grow.
I get that kind of, but all the shows I've watched that I liked were not like that at all. Like all the other shows I've watched this season. Well, I guess this year I should say. But
Yeah, and I'm not saying Astra's like the best show of the season, but you know, it's you know, I still think it deserves more credit than just a quick write off.
I'm sure it's a lot better than I'm giving it credit for, but I don't know. I just 3 minutes into the second episode, and I just felt this overwhelming feeling of dread, and I was like, I don't want to watch this. I can't binge watch this.
Fair enough.
Like maybe if it was 2016 and I was first starting anime, I would be a little bit more willing to. But I'm just like
younger, wide-eyed Matt.
I'm just a little tired of this kind of show.
I ain't got time for no middling crap. It's okay when Matt does it, but bad when Frank does it.
I'm just tired. This is the thing. I really don't think I really do like shonen all that much. And man, is this show shonen.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It is a shonen.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what you do like, Matt?
What do I like?
Dumbbells.
Apparently, yeah, kind of. But where's Kenny?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
bring
we-
Kenny back. We didn't even
Kenny.
talk about the final episode, really.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
it's
Because frankly, the final episode just kind of plays out as you would expect.
yep.
Anyways, is Kenny here?
He'll be here. Why don't you tell us what this Dumbbell show's about?
Okay, so this Dumbbell show is about a group of cute girls weightlifting. It's basically this whole show is basically an infomercial. DL made a comment
I'm
in.
back.
Oh, there he is. We're talking about Dumbbell show now.
Okay.
So DL made a comment a couple days ago, like when Funk was memeing about issue Na, and like he said something like, "I hate these." I can't find what the comment he said, but he said something along the lines of like, "I hate these shows that are basically just like infomercials for things," and this show is basically that. It's basically just like it shows like a clip of the girls like going to the gym. Like there's a couple maybe little gags here and there. And then it's like, well, why don't we do this exercise? And then it like jumps into like explaining the exercise. And that's pretty much the entire show. It's very Dagashi Kashi-esque in its execution, where it's basically just every episode is just like a new couple, like just like how Dagashi Kashi was, every episode was, here's a candy that you may or may not know about. This show is like, here's a kind of exercise and how to do it. That's basically it. And over the course of the show, it introduces new characters, like your typical cute girls doing cute things show. Each have their own quirks. Like the main girl, the whole thing with her, like the whole show starts because she realizes that she's gained weight because she eats a lot and she likes eating, despite the fact that she like realistically is probably like what most people would consider to be a perfect 10. But it's Japan, so they're a little different than Amerifats. But so she starts going to a gym. There's some quirky things that are kind of silly about the show. The main guy of the show, Machio, is he looks like a he has this thing, this silly little gimmick where he looks just like a skinny college kid at first, but then every time he flexes or whatever, his muscles just burst out of his clothing. And he's actually this insane muscle head. That's him. That's his character. That's the joke. And there's other girls. There's the other girl. There's the other main girl in the show who has a muscle fetish. This Russian girl comes into the picture later on. I don't know what it is with Japan and Russians. They seem to really like Russian characters in their shows.
Well, the countries are in pretty close proximity.
They are pretty close proximity. That's true. There's the boxer girl, Ayaka. Basically, every girl is supposed to encompass, I guess, certain exercises to a certain extent. The teachers get involved into lifting weights and stuff as well. It's a pretty basic show. And boy, does this show love its Japanese comedy. The whole character does a wacky thing, and another character pops out of the corner of the screen and says "Whoa, that's a wacky thing you're doing there."
And you're saying you like the show? You of all people who hate this kind of shit?
Oh no, I didn't that was the least favorite part of the show, and almost made me drop it. I just barely liked the show. If it weren't for the fact that the show was about weightlifting, I would have probably given the show a 5.
Do you have a muscle girl fetish, Matt?
No, none of the girls in the show are muscle girls, other than maybe Ayaka, who has very profound abs. But yeah, if it weren't for the fact that this show, I'm just kind of here's the thing. I don't like a lot of the comedy in the show. It did get a couple laughs out of me. I will say that. There were some moments that I was okay, that one kind of got me. It's kind of I'm the show is dumb. It's not great. The comedy is kind of weighing it down a bit. But I feel like giving a show about being healthy and exercising a bad score is a little I don't know. It's kind of I don't know how to feel about this.
The show's doing a public service to otaku.
It's doing a public service to otaku.
Did you feel inspired, Matt?
It made me feel really bad at the end of every episode where they spent a minute and a half doing an exercise with the audience and expecting the audience to do it with them. And I did nothing.
Sat there and watched?
And I just sat there and watched. I was like, oh boy.
Sounds like some Dora the Explorer shit.
Kind of. I did there was some stuff I genuinely learned from the show. Apparently it's not good to stretch certain ways before doing a run. Apparently it's actually bad to do certain static stretches before running.
Colin, can you confirm this?
I always stretch after, so
yeah, it's apparently not a good thing. You can do stuff like the arm circle things, anything that's movement based is apparently okay, but you're not supposed to do stuff just the reaching out to the point of your toe, whatever that's called.
Oh yeah, I never do that.
And the thing where you put your elbow behind. You can't see me, but I'm doing it right now. It's, when you bend your arm and put your palm on your elbow and try to stretch it behind your head, whatever that's called.
Yeah, I'm dial as fuck, so that's not what I do.
Okay. I did all these. I was in cross country and track, so we did all these every practice.
Yeah, I was in cross country and track as well.
It's stuck in my head. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that was something I like. There is some stuff I genuinely did not know about the show. I mean, it teaches you how to do all the stretches correct, all the exercises correctly. It's always like whenever a character does something like that's really stupid, there's always like a little thing on the screen that's like, note, do not do this. This is dumb to do. So it's not like just like it does at least do that correctly. And it does a good enough job at animating the exercises to show you how you're supposed to do it correctly as well. Like it always shows you like this is how you don't do it and this is how you're supposed to do it. Which typically is just you should like keep yourself straight, keep your arms straight, like don't lock your knees, stuff like that.
Should we create in our decade in review podcast, should we create a category of awards called most useful anime?
This is definitely, I mean, I would say this is up there. I mean, I think one of my biggest problems with the show is like the biggest problems with the show are just it's comedy just being the most lazy form of comedy you could possibly implement, and the fact that it's a 24-minute long show, and it has the same problem of the first season of the Gashikashi, where you could easily cut the show in half and it would be perfectly fine.
But how did Kenny feel about it?
Do what?
How did you feel about the dumbbell anime?
Kenny, tell us how heavy the dumbbells are that you lift.
I wouldn't know because I don't own any. But yeah, if you want to make yourself feel like shit at the end of the day, watch this show. Yep.
I didn't watch it.
Or, you know what? You could feel better by doing some of the exercises they display on the show.
How about I fly to California and kick your fucking ass?
Oh my god.
How about you fly to California and give me a big old kiss? How about that, Kenny?
Actually, that doesn't sound too bad.
All right. We're in it now, boys.
You want a bro hug?
What do we call the ship? We're going to call it Kenny.
Well, now that we resolved that,
I guess one more thing.
Yep, go ahead.
This is probably the most tamest show I've ever seen that has had the ecchi tag. Like,
huh?
This show has this show is like tagged as an ecchi. Like the most ecchi it gets is having certain characters naked.
when they demonstrate like all the exercises like in the show or like however you whatever what's the fucking guy's name? Machio. Whenever he like describes like whatever they're doing, like it always put like one of the girls like doing some exercise and like minimal clothing. Absolutely
basically
minimal clothing.
Yeah, basically every exercise ends with like a little with a little just like screenshot of like a picture of one of the girls like in a lewd pose, like exposing the certain part of their body that the exercise is supposed to help improve, which it's like I mean it's nudity with a purpose. So I guess
nudity with a purpose.
So I mean, it's at least has a reason to be there. Like that is, I will applaud it for finding a way to expose girls' bodies for a reason. Also, it has a character. Just
put it on a T-shirt.
This character, this show has a character in it named Barnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Just in case you were wondering about the humor of the show.
Seems appropriate.
I'm thinking he's based.
He is pretty based.
He's very based.
Wonderful.
I'm not talking basing like a turkey.
No, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
That was fucking terrible. Can we end it?
We're gonna take a little break while Kenny recovers from this, and we'll be right back. Welcome back once again to the Luckycast. So we got Frank with us for one more show. You want to introduce this one?
Sure.
No, he doesn't.
Oh god.
Never mind.
So this is Mario Okada's newest breakout hit, actually based on a manga that she wrote herself. So that distinguishes it from many other projects on which she mostly did the series composition of works that weren't her own. It's called its slave name, so to speak, is called "O Maidens in Your Savage Season," but the Japanese name would probably just be like Araburu. It is a relatively thoughtful exploration of 5 high school girls as they try to struggle through high school life while uncovering, and coming to terms with their relationship with sex. And in true Mario Okada fashion, she pulls no punches in making it as melodramatic and extreme as she possibly can, to mixed results. Araburu certainly has some heart to it. You can tell that it's coming from a place of, absolute blatant disregard when it comes to making people comfortable, because she certainly wants to put the characters in uncomfortable situations and make them come to harrowing realizations about how they feel about their respective crushes and how they want to proceed in life. And the scenarios kind of vary from character to character. It does a pretty decent job of balancing between its 5 leads. I don't think any one of them particularly get the short end of the stick when it comes to screen time per se.
One of them got the short stick with the ending, but that's about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say when it comes to resolution, it gets a little muddy because why are you telling me to be quiet? like when it comes to resolution, it gets a little muddy because there are no real right or wrong answers.
What the fuck is going on?
Just let him talk.
When it comes to someone's sexual awakening or whatever the case may be, they're kind of just haphazardly navigating with no real
or someone walking into a room and seeing you masturbating to
porn. That's what I'm saying. Like she has she's certainly comfortable with putting her characters in situations that are very awkward and having them rationalize those feelings in her typical Mario Okada fashion, which of course is, making them vocalize them at the top of their lungs.
Well,
so Steve, I know you also watched this show.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
I really, really like this show.
I enjoyed it a lot.
So I kind of have a real soft spot for like just well done, kind of down to earth coming of age stories. And this one in particular was probably the most honest and explicit exploration of girls talking about sex that I've ever seen in an anime. Like it's not something that's typically explored very often in this medium. So just from that perspective, it was a very kind of fresh take on this sort of thing. And in particular, there was one really interesting thing I took away from the story that I'd never really thought about before, and anime doesn't really get into. And it's a very common trope of the childhood friend, and they don't this is a rare example of the childhood friend winning, but that's not really the takeaway I got from it.
Right.
it explored that with a kind of realistic take on that, in that, like, these two characters have a clear romantic attraction to each other, but not a sexual one.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like, I never really thought about it, but that makes total fucking sense, because this person, you can easily see these two characters who've been together all their lives coming to love each other, but, you know, they've never seen each other with that sort of look. And now to have to, you know, basically overcome that, because otherwise it's going to not be a very long-lasting relationship. Being, like, forced to deal with the awkwardness of this whole situation.
Yeah, it's definitely uncomfortable, and it's not something that you often see explored in shows like this.
Yeah,
you know,
for
him to, you know, come out and say, like, you know, like, oh, I have romantic feelings for her, but I'm not sexually attracted to her because I'm sexually attracted to someone else, and then having to come to terms with that. It's a tough situation, and it's, you know, one that Okada, you know, like, I don't think I would trust most other, you know, authors to, you know, pull off something like that with relative grace without it feeling like, you know, it's a little ham-fisted. But Okada has a knack for making it feel like sloppy in a good way, because those feelings are obviously very sloppy, and, you know, she wants to make sure that that's coming across through the medium. So I'm pretty satisfied with how it panned out in that regard.
And it spends, like, the right amount of time dealing with these issues. Like, you do, before the series is all the way done, you do get progressions where these characters start hooking up, which was nice to see.
Right.
But that never felt rushed, and there was still more to explore even after that, which, you know, most shows either A, don't want to have characters hook up at all, or B, just have that be the end of it because they don't know, like, what possibly to do with it afterwards. But this is a story that still had more to explore with that. And the only, like, real criticism I have is that, like, yeah, the ending does feel a bit rushed in that respect, because basically you're getting up to episode 11 and none of these characters have had their stories totally resolved yet. And it really struggles in episode 12, which overall I felt was a very satisfying conclusion in terms of making you feel good about
it was
the
as good
events
as
of the
it could
show.
have been.
But, like, not every character was able to get what they needed to get out of that ending, unfortunately. You're just kind of left with an epilogue that, you know, points in good directions, but it's not the full resolution that you were hoping for. And I also just like how the show was able to handle all this with a sense of humor about it. Like, it wasn't, like, there is melodrama here, but that's not, like, 24/7 what's going on with these characters. You know, it addresses it with a lot of humor that is able to offset some of the heavy moments and create a really enjoyable balance that makes the whole show just fun to watch.
And a lot of the visual gags are also really fun. Like
the poetry of the train tunnel was just, oh my god, it was perfect. Just an amazing way to end the show.
It has a very good, like, comedic timing, which I really enjoyed.
Yes. So why did Matt hate this?
I hated the characters, and I thought it was boring. That's pretty much it.
So, Matt, for people who maybe aren't aware,
like, honestly, like, the funny thing is, I was going into the show expecting to finish it and expecting to hate it because it's Mario Okada, but it's really just because it has nothing to do with her.
But it kind of does, because, like, everything about this story is hers. I was
just fucking bored of it, and I didn't really like the characters. It's that whole oh, this is the awkward girl, this is the lesbian, this is the slut, this is the nerd.
But there's so much more than that, honestly.
I guess maybe, but I don't know.
And some of those aren't even become apparent until, like, well into the show.
I don't know. I think I just hate anything that feels like it's gonna be, like, I did read a bit about the show before watching it, and I did know it kind of went into melodrama, soap opera territory, which is like my least favorite kind of romance, and why I avoid basically any Western romance. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just I just didn't like the characters and just didn't really feel like watching it after watching like half of the second episode.
Oh, you're a piece of shit.
No, I can get Matt's coming from, but this is just one of those shows where like if it was handled way worse than it was, then yeah, this would be the kind of thing that would turn me off instantly. But it's like there was like enough here that was not only well done but interesting and
there was like
relatively
a
unique.
ton of shit going on.
Yeah,
it was just.
I was fully engaged from start to finish in these characters, and that's not something that happens very often, so I give this show a ton of credit for that.
I mean, my main thing with Mario Kata is that, and I think I read that this show apparently does it too, is that she really likes doing this thing where all the melodrama builds up to like a big climax, and at that point all the characters just kind of start screaming at each other. And then at the end, it just kind of solves their problems. Like, Kisniver does this. Anohana does this.
Yeah, but it's good in Anohana.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
it's the worst part.
Like,
it that ruined the show.
It's not.
I think it makes sense there.
It's not necessarily all screaming here either.
It would if Menma wasn't such a terrible character.
Ooh. I don't know how I feel about that.
Like,
it would if Menma had a character.
Oh my gosh!
I really don't know how I feel about that.
Shots are being fired here. I don't like this.
I think it's like this is her tackling what is very a common problem with not only shows but also in real life of just people not talking about things. And maybe she handles that probably the most overt way, but like the characters actually talking and addressing the issues are what makes the shows she writes work for me.
I get that. I just wish it didn't feel like it was so fucking ham-handed. I just hate the way that she writes her characters.
See, I don't think it's like that in the show. Like
I just despise the way that she writes her characters and her dialogue and everything. It physically hurts me.
Well, I can't argue with that, I guess, but
I mean, I'm sure she's part. I'm sure she's part of the reason why the last couple episodes of Toradora were as stupid as they were as well. Because I think I read that apparently in the original ending of Toradora, like, it makes a bit more sense in the novel than it does in the show. I might be wrong on that.
About Toradora didn't make sense.
Huh?
I don't know what about the ending of Toradora didn't make sense.
Them just kind of, I guess, like, I don't know. There's a part where they just run away from home.
Yeah.
And there's the part where Taiga, I forget why the running away from home thing left a bad impression on me. It's been a while since I watched the show. But there's also the part where Taiga just leaves for, like, I forget how long it is, but she leaves for a very long period of time, just cuts off all contact with Ryuji.
I don't know if that's very true. Like, that does happen. She does have to leave, but, like, that was her, like, not running away from the problem. Like, that was something she couldn't avoid. And again, like, that was not necessarily the most emotionally satisfying conclusion, but it made sense within the context of what was happening with those characters.
Like, yeah, like that I get. But I mean, I'm mostly Toradora is not why I don't like Mario Kart.
That's fair enough.
It's stuff like Mayoiga.
Mayoiga is his own unique brand of awfulness that I don't necessarily know has to do with the kind of things you're complaining about here, but
it kind of does. Mayoiga has a lot more problems than Mario Kata, but
it did have a hippopotamus song.
Every time you say that, it sounds like you're saying Mario Kart.
I think of all her stuff though, Kisniver was probably the worst offender.
Yeah, I am not going to fucking defend Kisniver. Like, yeah,
I will.
I know you will, but it's like
Frank, shut the fuck up.
Either way,
I still think even in spite of like at her worst, she can still write stuff that's also really good. Like she is kind of like there's no in between with her.
she is like the definition of hit or miss.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Because I know there's I never watched it, but there's like Hanazuka Hiroha, who
Hanasaka Hiroha is
also a really good show.
who I heard is really good. There's Hisone Tomaso-tan, which I heard is really good. There's there's something else. Oh, there's this Nagi no Asukara, whatever this is. A Lull in the Sea, apparently, is its English name.
I think Kenny really liked that. I haven't seen it.
A lot of people enjoy that show. I haven't seen it myself.
There's this Kafoku Graffiti.
That's
Apparently she did that.
Yeah, less said about that the better. But
and that she also did that pedophile show that DL really liked.
let's not get into that.
DL doesn't watch anime anymore. So.
Not anymore. Any final thoughts on Araburu?
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
Does anyone want to guess who my favorite character is?
Ooh.
Is it the girl who makes the one guy touch her butt?
It's got to be Hongo, right?
Who?
Hongo.
Hongo.
Yeah,
I would say
black-haired one.
Sonozaki.
Let's use first names.
Hitoha.
Who was it?
You're wrong.
Kenny?
No, you're wrong.
Just tell us who it was.
No, guess.
I already did.
That was the whole point of me bringing it up. Like, you gotta guess.
I already did.
Is it Rika?
I fucking hate you.
That was my guess.
It is Rika.
Thank you. I win. All right. You gotta go, Frank?
Yeah, I'm headed up. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me, guys.
No
I really
problem. Thanks for
appreciate
joining
it.
us.
Yeah, I
Bye.
can't wait to see you guys for the decade in review.
Ooh, it's gonna be a
Oh
big
boy.
one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a doozy. Take care.
Bye, Frank.
See ya.
All right, now that Frank's gone, we can talk about the real meat of the season.
Oh boy.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, let's talk about, and I'm gonna fucking try to pronounce the whole thing, so bear with me. Tsuujou Kougeki ga Zentai Kougeki
dear.
Nikai
Oh, dear
Kougeki
God. Just
no
say-
Okaasan wa Suki desu ka, aka
gosh.
Do You Love Your Mom and Her Two-Hit Multi-Target Attacks, aka Okaasan Online, aka One Punch Mom, aka The Rising of the MILF Hero, aka Is It Wrong to Pick Up Your Mom in a Dungeon? Alright, that's all I got. This show was, Colin might agree with you, this show was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
This one might call this one of the dumbest anime ever. But I still found it enjoyable. I know how this is gonna sound. Like, this is a show that's very self-aware of how fucking dumb it is. And that's not, I don't say that to excuse criticism of it, because there's plenty to go around. But it at least leans into it in a way that made this, stand out from every other cookie-cutter isekai show out there. This show leaned into the fact that, hey, we're not even going to fucking try and explain the plot here. Just, you're in a video game now. You're in a different world. Have fun. It was the most mom-themed show you could possibly come up with, where every place, every person, every conflict was mom-related and had mom-related resolutions to it. It was fun. It was dumb, but it was fun.
It could be cute.
Yes.
And you know what?
It
It got
was-
a couple here and there. It got a couple of laughs out of me too.
The
Kenny?
probably the fucking hottest mom you could ever ask for.
Well, thankfully,
Shit. Like,
the lead guy is portrayed as deeply embarrassed by his hot mom
Yes.
rather than turned on.
yeah.
So
If
you're not thrown into complete porn territory.
I know. If that would have happened, I would have dropped it immediately. It would just, God.
You know what? Something I actually like about this show is that it's barely even isekai, really.
Can I ask, like, did you all finish it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even start it.
Yeah, okay. This show is barely even isekai. It's not even, oh, this world is just like a video game. It really is just a video game.
Yeah.
This show could just be a bunch of people sitting in front of a television screen playing a video game together, and I don't think it would change at all.
No. So one of the things I really appreciated that was the just like, you know, I'm not gonna fucking sit here and call this show subversive, but like the fact that like it is completely the antithesis of what most isekai shows go for, where this is not a power fantasy for your insert character. This is the complete opposite, and I'm glad the show went with that route, because, you know, anytime the show tries to get a bit too serious is when it completely falls on its face a bit, because it does not have the chops for that. But a lot of the lighthearted stuff, a lot of the humor stuff is ultimately what makes it tick, and what can get you through what's otherwise a pretty uneventful show.
Yeah, there's generally not too much to talk about. I do think they spent way too much time on the Medi saga.
They did, but
they did. They definitely did.
They did, but at least of the non-mom party members, she came out as being the most interesting one, and I appreciated that. I would basically call this show like a scuffed Konosuba, because it's kind of going for that same lighthearted / parody thing, but obviously not doing it nearly as well and not having as strong characters. But, you know, if you want something of that vein, this is at least trying, which is the most amount of credit I'll give it. But I certainly appreciate something like this way more than the other fucking 5 isekai shows that air every season that I can't even be bothered with anymore to even give a chance to.
Isekai could be. Like, I was just saying this the other day. I was saying isekai could be so much more fun if they mixed it up beyond Dragon Quest.
Everyone in fucking Japan loves Dragon Quest, so that's what we gotta stick to, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know what the. Yeah, whatever.
It's the RPG that defines what RPGs are, Kenny.
Okay, that's fine. So, did anyone watch Isekai Cheat Magician?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
What the fuck was that? You.
That is a mighty roar.
Cute mom, though.
That was anguish manifesting.
Kenny.
Yes.
Sounan Desu was the show that you really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed.
Yes.
And I think we're the only ones who watched it. But for anyone who doesn't know, it's a show about 4 cute girls who get stuck on an island. And it's basically Castaway, but anime. And you know what? For a short anime, it was only 12 minutes long. I actually had a pretty good time with it. It's probably the most disgusting anime that you may ever watch for reasons you would not expect. But that kind of lent it a sense of humor that I actually appreciated. Like, you know, taking these girls, putting them into this situation, and then forcing them to fend for themselves in ways that might other shows would be very, very afraid of putting their cute anime girls into. The show is not afraid to do that.
You're very, very introduced to that sort of situation in the very first episode.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like, it was probably my favorite of the season. to be
Really?
honest. Yeah. Um. Like Steve said, it's like basically like Castaway, but like there's 4 girls like that are like that survived like I guess a plane crash. It was a plane crash, right?
Yeah, it's less
Yeah.
ambiguous, but
But basically, this one girl is basically Bear Grylls. If any, like if any of you,
anime Bear Grylls.
The boots on fire.
am I wrong?
No.
Because
So that's
what?
So the thing about this, I believe the manga is actually written by a guy who is a survival expert, which makes a lot of sense.
I guess like you said, it's ambiguous, and like her father, like it's Homare, which is the girl that like pretty much just does everything for them, and she like her father's like a survival expert or was in the military or something like that, and she like just keeps everyone alive. She goes out of her way like to do like everything for them, and I don't know. Like there's some like there's humor in it, but like it's just like a lot of it's like it's honestly fucking disgusting at some
It is, and I'm hesitant to call it educational because it feels like some of the survival tips in the show make sense and could work, but also you had stuff like take your battery out of your cell phone and throw it at this shark so it'll scare him away, which I'm not sure is scientifically accurate. But you know, whatever, it's an anime, so
yeah, I don't know. But no, honestly, seriously, I think it was my favorite this
I can
season.
see that.
So
it was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a fun watch.
Tell everyone what happened in the last episode, Kenny. Just to give people some context of what's going on in this show.
Some context. So, so basically, oh god, what's the other character's name? Hang on a second. It's Shion.
Yes.
Who drifts out to sea on a fucking random island, and Homare goes out there to save her. Like she builds a raft like with like the other girls that are there, and they get back to shore, and then like it was just really weird. Like, well, it wasn't weird, but like it was just like so rushed. It was just like her dad just is on a boat. She's just like, and he's like, yeah, I'll just be there like in a minute.
Oh, that's not what I was talking about, but
What were you talking about?
I'm talking. So they're on this raft in the middle of the ocean trying to get back to the island, and they don't have anything to drink. All they have is this guano infested water that they collected from a cave.
Oh God.
And obviously you don't want to drink that if you're dehydrated because it'll just make you throw up and lose more liquids. So they have to figure out a way to get this into their bodies, and the solution is to ingest it anally, with one girl putting the guano-infested water into her mouth and then going mouth to ass and inserting the guano-infested water into the other girl's anus in order to hydrate her. That's what this show is about.
Okay.
What have we learned here today?
how to survive on a desert, on like a deserted island?
How death might not be the worst outcome in this scenario.
The shit was great though.
It was pretty funny.
Everything else, I don't fucking know.
Was there any other shows you guys wanted to talk about?
I saw Joker.
Oh, you're still alive.
The Fire Force character?
I was actually kind of hoping Frank would stick around. We have an anime Joker discussion.
Oh, God.
Probably not the place for that, but
Did anyone... Wait.
yeah.
Wait.
Sorry, I was going to say apologies to everyone out there. We did not watch Dr. Stone this season. We understand that was a big show.
We actively avoided Dr. Stone.
So I've actually read over 100 chapters of the manga. I read it a while ago, but I just didn't bother with the anime. Not because I necessarily disliked it. I just didn't really bother with it. And then I found out that my friends weren't watching it, and so I just kind of skipped it. So, sorry. It's decent. It's MacGyver rebuilds civilization.
With alien faces on the girls or something.
Yeah, and the girls are ALMAOs. One last note about Yaiba. I think the way the show adapts some of the humor with Inosuke, I actually found it a little bit funnier in the manga because I like how they just kind of snap to these shots of Inosuke being a fucking freak. Whereas in the anime, you kind of see a fuller range of motion for the character, which is still funny, but it's different. And that's that. That's all I gotta say.
Inosuke is best boy.
He's cute. Oh, yeah, and I guess it's nice that they don't lean into the fact that he has a beautiful face too much. They actually, even after they show it, they keep obscuring him for long periods of time.
Yeah, I mean,
surprising amount of restraint.
Surprisingly, not going all in on the what are they called again?
Fujo Bucks.
Yeah, not going all in on the Fujo Bucks. They're not pulling an Osamatsu-san with this one.
Oh, there was also Danmachi Season 2, which was a disappointment. Same JC staff problem of just, man, this show really goes off the rails on the production side towards the end. There was one really well-animated fight in, like, episode 9 or 10.
And here's where it really goes off the rails.
Yeah, and then the last episode was, like, the last 2 episodes were, like, the most budget episodes you could possibly conceive. And it fucking... I ranted about this in the Clyde, but since people don't know what the Clyde is, they're going to need context for this. So, when this... so, there was an arc... It was the second arc of this season, which is about the main character, Belle, saving this prostitute. Because they were going... The enemy familia that had her was going to sacrifice her to gain power. And the whole conflict about this was that she didn't want him to save her because she felt that, like, prostitutes only bring grief and pain to heroes, and Bell kind of has to wrestle with this himself because everyone's coming at him with the, position that, she's a prostitute, she's impure, she's tainted, she's not worth saving, basically. So they basically overcome this problem, and he goes to save her, and the lesson is essentially that it doesn't matter even if your profession is sex work, it doesn't make you a lesser person, it doesn't make you impure or tainted, you're just as worth saving as any other person. And then immediately after this arc is done, they do the fucking anime bullshit thing of, hey, even though she was a literal prostitute, she never actually slept with someone, she always fainted when she was with a guy, so she's actually still pure, so that please buy her merchandise.
God.
Which I've heard was an editorial thing for the light novel where the editor basically made the author do this, which makes a lot of sense because that's clearly not what he was going for with the original story. But man, it completely undermines everything that arc built up to. That it was just beyond frustrating.
No, it was a facepalm moment.
It was very much so because overall, like, I enjoyed where the characters in the story went this season, but it was still kind of marred by bizarre decisions like that and production issues on the animation side. So, and I've heard a lot of people who've read the light novels were not happy with the adaptation. I haven't read them, so I can't say that. But yeah, it was just kind of a disappointment, especially because I felt like it started off fairly strong. But
yeah, but one more, the quintessential quintuplets.
Kenny did watch that recently.
That was last season.
That's okay.
That was last
No,
season?
that was winter season, I think.
That was winter.
Oh yeah,
No,
I guess
no.
that was winter.
Oh no, this is something different. Never mind.
Huh?
Huh? Do you want to talk about quintuplets?
No.
Don't talk about quintuplets, Kenny.
Well, I mean, all that matters is that Miku's the best, right, Kenny?
Miku is the best. You know
Thank
why?
you. I rest
Go
my
read
case.
the manga, you plebs.
Nope.
You know why
Yotsu
Miku?
Bros.
Yotsu Bros!
Why is Miku the best, Kenny?
Because she looks like Maki.
Oh my
course.
god.
It all comes together.
Maki with headphones.
They all look like Maki.
Maki-
They're
Maki-
quintuplets.
Maki with headphones. Is there anything else?
I think we covered everything. It was a busy season.
Yeah, busy
Astra.
season, but mediocre. Like,
Lots of
I don't know.
trash.
There were some good shows in there. I more than any other year, this year I've definitely found myself going, yeah, I'm not even going to give these shows a chance that look bad. And when I look back on the scores on these shows, scores aren't everything, but you feel kind of justified. If this,
you can make a judgment call. Like, you can't just
I was kind of interested in this Copcraft show, but then I just saw
I
the
watched
score
that.
getting lower and lower.
So I did watch that. I watched 4 episodes. I didn't drop it because it was necessarily bad. I just kind of lost interest.
Wait,
but
what was it?
Copcraft. It's basically like a buddy cop fantasy story where this gruffled police officer teams up with this elf girl from another world to solve like fantasy related crimes and shit like that. It was animated by the studio that did the 2D elements of the recent Berserk anime, which explains the immediate drop in quality in episode 3. It was really bad. Story-wise, it wasn't like, offensively bad or anything. It's just like it was one of those shows I fell behind on and I was not interested enough to get caught up on, so that's all I really need to say about that one. Other than that, I think that was the only other thing I watched that we hadn't already talked about.
Anything we're looking forward to fall?
A lot of sequels.
There are a lot of sequels.
What Bokuben came out today, so
That's good for you.
yeah.
Bogu no Hero.
What the fuck does that mean? Good for
Bogu
me.
no Hero.
You only want to watch the first season, so.
None of you watched that.
No.
Are you serious?
No, we watched Quintuplets. It was a better show.
I was gonna
No,
watch it.
No, Quintuplets was not better.
I'll watch Boku Ben, Kenny. We can be Boku friends next season.
I'm just putting this out there. I'm not watching Beastars.
I'll watch. I'll do it. I'll watch Beastars.
I will
I'm
watch
not.
Beastars.
The fact that Thunk mentioned that is the reason I don't want to watch it.
Besides being a furry anime, I'm just really pissed off because it's only one letter away from Beast Wars, which is great. So it just pisses me off seeing Beastars.
Was fucking awful.
No, you're awful. Beast
No,
Wars is the greatest cartoon of all time. You have no fucking idea.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
No.
Beast Wars is amazing. It was a milestone in children's cartoon entertainment.
No. I'm a Transformers fan, just like you, and that show fucking sucked.
No, that show is fantastic.
No.
You know what fucking sucks? G1 Transformers is fucking trash. That show is not one that held up with age, but Beast Wars, fucking masterpiece.
No,
Yes.
it wasn't. Nope. Nope.
Absolutely.
Who gonna watch Gunface McGee here, huh?
I'll watch that.
The what?
The guy
Gunface
with a gun
McGee.
for a head.
What the fuck is that?
It's a show about a Gunface McGee who shoots people with his face, man.
Yeah, he has a gun for a head.
No,
Didn't we talk about this the other night?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
There's nothing to do with that Rifle's Beautiful show either. What the fuck? That's by the Flip Flapper studio. Now I gotta fucking watch this shit.
Rifle Girls?
Yeah, the Rifle is Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's gonna be fucking gold.
Yeah, that's
it's
your
gonna be
show of the
fucking
season.
Awesome.
It's a 4 coma manga adaptation, so we'll see.
But it's by Studio 3 Hertz, so I have to watch it.
All right.
Hey, it's girls with guns. Awesome.
Henny, you're a simple man, but we love that about you.
I'm the biggest fucking piece of shit. I'm
All
sorry.
right, we're done here. All right, let's sign off. Bye, guys.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Bye forever.
Bye.
Bye.
I hate it.